What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Bulls Report. My name is Patrick Siepman. And coming up on today's show, I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on what I believe is the biggest issue around the Chicago Bulls basketball team heading into the season. And then Bleacher Report put out an article ranking each NBA team's 3-year window. And funny enough, they had the Bulls ranking dead last. So we'll dive into that article on the later half of today's show. But before we dive into that, I want to get the good vibes going heading into the year because obviously Bulls fans, they are pessimistic about where this franchise stands right now. So if you guys want the Bulls to turn it around, like this video, please, I'm asking for your help. If anything can contribute to the Bulls, maybe, not being the worst team in the NBA over the next 3 years, maybe liking the video will help. So hit that thumbs up icon. But let's dive into it. What is the Bulls' biggest issue heading into the year? Now, you could go, maybe they need to add more shooters. Maybe they need to add more size, get more 3-and-D players. But I truly believe the Bulls' biggest issue heading into the season is having these two players still on the roster. I don't actually think it's an on-the-court issue for the Bulls, as obviously they're not trying to contend for a championship. They are not trying to win basketball games next season. But the biggest issue heading into the year is having these two guys still on this roster. And here is why. Because if the Bulls are fully embracing this youth movement, if they are fully heading towards this rebuild, what is the best way to develop young talent in the NBA? It is getting them out there on the basketball court. And when you still have LaVine, when you still have Vucevic on this roster, it's just going to hinder the development of some of these young guys. And we can take a look at it right now. The Bulls youth movement is here. Like, they have 10 players on the roster under the age of 26 years old. Now, in terms of LaVine and Vucevic, whose development are they hindering? Well, on LaVine's front, Bulls have 4 young wings in Williams, Julian Phillips, Modest Buzelis, and Dalen Terry. And then on Vooch, he's going to hinder the development of Jalen Smith, who they just gave a 3-year deal this offseason. And I think he has the chance to, be a solid starting center for this Bulls team this upcoming year. But if Vooch is there, he's not going to really be able to get the chance to do so. And I think the best example of this is looking back at last year. Coby White and Ayo Dosunmu. They both started the year playing okay basketball, but they pretty much looked more of themselves to what they were, in years past. But we really saw that jump. Once Zach LaVine left the starting lineup, Ayo slotted into that starting 2 guard, and we just saw Coby White up his usage rate, up his shots per game, and we really saw those two develop and have some of the best years of their NBA career. And, kind of on me here. I probably should have shown the stats from post Zach LaVine being in the lineup. But still, the fact that Coby was able to average 19.1 points per game on incredible efficiency speaks to his development. And if he wasn't able to get those more shot attempts, get that higher usage rate, we wouldn't have seen that jump in his game. And, take Ayo, for example. He had a great rookie season. He shot the ball very well his freshman year. Then his sophomore campaign, he came back down to reality a little bit. But then his junior year this past season, he was phenomenal. A great two-way guard, a great point-of-attack defender, and he was able to knock down shots in the flow of the offense. And he's never that guy who, if he's going to be productive on that side of the court, it's not a guy that's like, hey, I need the ball. I need to be the primary creator. He can play off ball, and he can just, play within the flow of a team's offense. And, more on Jalen Smith here is, I have been calling him the perfect modern-day big, where you could slate him in at the starting 4 spot, where he could play some big 4 for you because he still has an ability to stretch the floor, shot 42% from downtown last year on 3.5 attempts per game. And then you also, could play him at the 5 and play a little 5-out offense. And I think, take the Boston Celtics last year, for example. Their death lineup of running 5 out while still having a rim protector in the game in Porzingis was huge. I mean, obviously they got a ton of talent on that basketball team, but I think that is the modern-day example of what a perfect 5-out offense could look like while still being one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. And when I talk about biggest issues, when I talk about this Bulls basketball team, it just gets me back to this. Chicago deserves better. And if you look at all the major Chicago sports teams right now, the Cubs are a disaster. The White Sox are possibly one of the worst baseball teams in MLB history. The Bears are fun. They're an up-and-coming team, and hopefully they have a good year this upcoming year. The Blackhawks have Bedard, but then you look at the Bulls, and they're just stuck in the mud. And obviously Chicago is a great basketball city. Some of the best talent we have in the NBA right now came from the city of Chicago. And in my opinion, the best time to be alive, to be a Bulls fan, was the 90s. It was the most entertaining brand of basketball I have ever seen out there on the hardwood. I just think Chicago deserves better. And hey, moving off Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic would be a great start, to having the Bulls play better basketball here in the future. But I'll ask you guys, if you guys had to pick one player of the trade before the season starts, who is it? Zach LaVine or Nikola Vucevic? Type their initials down below in the comment section and tell me what you guys think if you guys had to pick one to trade before the season starts. Now, we'll dive into that Bleacher Report article here in a second, but first off, got to give a massive shout out to today's sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. And if you guys use promo code CLNS when you're making your first deposit, we will match it up to $100. Now, Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And if you guys want to get in on the action today, make sure you guys hit that link in the comment section and description of today's show and plug in that promo code CLNS, and we will match it up to $100. And you guys can already create lineups for the football season, which is just around the corner. Or if you guys want to get involved in season-long projections for the NBA, Prize Picks has that as well. Or maybe you want to put some money on Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky. Prize Picks has WNBA plays as well. So all you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And this is actually my lineup for week 1 of the football season, where I'm going to take the more on Caleb Williams' passing yards at 236.5. Take the more on Jefferson's receiving yards at 89.5. Then I think Caleb's going to be finding DJ a whole lot during week 1. So I'm going to take the more on his receiving yards at 63.5. But if you guys want to fade those picks or ride with those picks, just do so at Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app, use that promo code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game. So Bleacher Report put out an article ranking every NBA team's 3-year window. And where did the Chicago Bulls rank on that list? There are 30 NBA teams, and the Chicago Bulls ranked 30th on that list. And I know Bulls fans may be saying, well, that's BS. That's, being too negative around this team's future over the next couple of seasons. I think Bleacher Report nailed it on the head, and I think they were 100% correct ranking the Bulls dead last. This is actually Dan Favo had to say, who wrote up this article, saying other teams should end up with worse collective records than the Chicago Bulls over the next 3 years. That's part of the problem. Chicago appears to have leaned into a more gradual outlook after moving on from Alex Caruso and DeMar DeRozan. That's different from embracing a full-on rebuild. They re-signed Patrick Williams because, letting him walk would have been a terrible look. Going on 23, he too can be part of the next phase, but having to significantly reinvest in a roster without concrete direction is weird. Bleacher Report is 100% correct on this. I don't think the Bulls over the next 3 seasons are going to have the worst record in the NBA because they do have more talent than teams like, let's just say, the Wizards and the Nets, for example. But at least those teams are giving themselves a chance in next year's lottery where they could go land Cooper Flag, because nothing moves the needle in all of sports more than getting that top-tier NBA player. Take the Spurs, for example. What would we be saying about the Spurs if they didn't get Wemby? We would be saying, yeah, they're another bottom feeder in the NBA, but now since they have that generational talent, we're talking about them potentially ripping off a dynasty over the next 15 years. And this is why I stand by my take that nobody on this Bulls roster should be untouchable. Let's just say next trade deadline rolls around. A team calls you up for Coby White with his 3-year, $39 million deal. That is one of the best contracts in the NBA. That's probably your best asset. If a team calls you up and says, we'll give you 3 unprotected first-round picks, 2 unprotected picks, whatever it may be, you take that deal because no player on this roster is untouchable. But let's kick it to Dan Favo here for more on what he had to say about the Bulls. He says, it really seems like Chicago is caught between wearing agendas. That's not changing so long as Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic are on the roster. Coby White will soon loom as a somewhat bizarre fit. He doesn't turn 21 until February, but he's on a bargain bin contract that concludes in 2 years and is so cheap for Chicago can extend him off of it. There's no guarantee he makes a ton of sense next to an offense presumably tailored around Giddey's on-ball reps either. If this offseason forecasts an eventual long overdue pivot into starting over, then so be it. But the duality of the Bulls situation puts them at a disadvantage. Other teams with eyes on the future have 1 or 2 primary cornerstones, or at least bad enough to be in position to draft one in 2025. And that is my point. The Bulls franchise player, as much as I love Coby White, it is most not likely him. That player is most likely not on the Bulls right now, and he's probably in next year's draft class. And that gets me to this. The worst case scenario for the Bulls this upcoming season is they end up, for the third straight year in a row, being the 9th seed in the Eastern Conference, which is the worst place to be in all of sports, where you're not good enough to compete for championships, but you're also not even close to bad enough to landing a top 5 pick in the draft. If the Bulls this upcoming year were by far going to be the worst team in the NBA, and they were able to move off LaVine, move off Vuce, and you said this team's probably going to win 10 to 15 games next season, I would be thrilled about it, because that would give you a chance to go land that phenom that's playing at Duke this upcoming season. And the more I just talk about the Bulls, the more fired up I get. As I hate calling out, front offices and saying like, oh, I would do a better job running this team. But the only front office in all of sports that I truly believe I could do a better job of running an organization is truly the Chicago Bulls. But I'll ask you guys this to close today's show. Are the Bulls the worst franchise in the NBA? Like, as it stands right now, do you agree with Bleacher Report? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no down below in the comments section. I 100% agree. I just think, Bleacher Report nailed it, straight on the head on this one. But you guys let me know your thoughts down below. And if you guys also want to give me a follow on Twitter, that's the handle right there, at Pat Sieps. And if you guys do so, I'll give you guys a follow right back. But see you guys next time. As always, go Bulls.